A 6-ton stone has been lying at the heart of Stonehenge for nearly 5,000 years, and scientists just confirmed it was carried there from over 700 kilometers away, before the wheel had even been invented. Not by glaciers, not by accident, by people. That single fact reshapes everything we thought we understood about the ancient world. Here is what makes this discovery so extraordinary. For over a century, researchers assumed the stones at Stonehenge came from relatively nearby Wales. A challenging journey, certainly, but one that seemed at least conceivable for Neolithic communities. The biggest stone, the flat slab of pale sandstone resting at the very center of the circle, was thought to be Welsh too. Everyone assumed it. No one could prove otherwise. Until a 26-year-old PhD student from Australia ran a batch of data through a set of instruments in Perth, looked at the results on his screen, and said out loud, and these are his actual words, "There is no way this can be so distinctly Scottish." So what did scientists actually find? And what does it mean that ancient Britons were moving multi-ton slabs of rock across the length of an entire country thousands of years before recorded history began? Stonehenge, as it stands today, is a series of massive stone arches rising from the flat grassland of Salisbury Plain in southern England. The tallest uprights stretch 7 meters into the gray English sky, rough-hewn columns of pale gray sarsen sandstone, capped with horizontal lintels that still sit locked in place after 4.5 millennia. At their feet, smaller blue stones form inner rings, their surfaces speckled blue-gray in the rain. And at the very center, half buried under the weight of centuries and the shadow of the surrounding giants, lies a single flat stone. 16 feet long, roughly 50 centimeters thick, its surface dark and gritty with age. This is the altar stone, and it has just been traced, with extraordinary scientific precision, to a geological basin in the far northeast of Scotland, a place called the Orcadian Basin, located near the very tip of the British mainland. To understand just how significant this is, you need to picture the Britain of 5,000 years ago. There were no roads. There were no horses in common use for transport. The wheel had not yet reached the British Isles. The landscape between Scotland and Wiltshire was dense with ancient forest, interrupted by rivers, bogs, and mountain ridges. And yet somehow, a stone weighing the equivalent of 12,000 pounds was moved from one end of Britain to the other. So how do we actually know where the stone came from? The answer lies in something called mineral fingerprinting, and it is one of the most elegant techniques in modern geology. Every rock that forms deep within the earth carries a kind of chemical diary. As the minerals crystallize under heat and pressure, they lock in specific combinations of elements and isotopic ratios that are unique to that geological environment. Think of it like a barcode, invisible to the eye, but precise enough to identify a stone's origin to within a specific region, or even a specific hillside. Researchers at Curtin University in Australia, led by PhD candidate Anthony Clark, used an instrument at their John de Later Center to analyze microscopic grains of a mineral called zircon, extracted from fragments of the altar stone. Zircon is one of the hardest minerals on Earth. It survives millions of years of geological change without losing its chemical signature. The team studied more than 500 individual zircon crystals and found that the mineral grains in the altar stone were mostly between 1,000 and 2,000 million years old, with a secondary population around 450 million years old. That particular combination of ages, according to the research published in the journal Nature, is a fingerprint that matches only one region in the entire British Isles, the Orcadian Basin of northeast Scotland. It matches nothing in Wales, it matches nothing in southern England. The stone simply could not have come from anywhere else. When we first got the first batch of data, Clark later told reporters, I looked at it and I said, there's no way that this can be so distinctly Scottish. So we did more analysis, and time again, it just pointed toward the Orcadian Basin. It's remarkable. At this point, a reasonable question is, could a glacier have moved the stone naturally, carrying it southward over tens of thousands of years? This is not a fringe theory. Glacial transport of large rocks across Britain is a known geological phenomenon. But in January 2026, a follow-up study from the same team addressed this directly. Scientists examined river sediments surrounding Stonehenge, searching for the specific mineral signatures that glaciers leave behind as they grind across bedrock, a kind of geological footprint. They studied over 500 additional zircon crystals from these sediments. They found no glacial fingerprint whatsoever. The ice, according to the evidence, simply never came this far south. The altar stone did not ride a glacier. Someone brought it. That someone lived approximately 5,000 years ago during what archaeologists call the Neolithic period, the Late Stone Age. These were farming communities. They built in wood and thatch. They used tools of flint and bone. And yet the logistics implied by this discovery are, by any measure, staggering. Consider the journey. From the Orcadian Basin to Salisbury Plain, even by sea, hugging the coastline of eastern Britain, navigating estuaries and tidal waters, the distance exceeds 700 kilometers. By land, through the forested interior of Britain, it would have been longer still, and essentially impossible without some form of waterway assistance. Most archaeologists who have studied this question believe the stone was likely loaded onto some form of raft or boat, carried down the eastern coast of Scotland, around the headlands of Norfolk and Suffolk, and then somehow transported inland across southern England to its final resting place. Reportedly, this is not a journey you undertake casually. It would have required planning across years. It would have required coordination between communities separated by hundreds of miles. It would have required not just labor, but organization, a social structure capable of motivating, feeding, and directing large numbers of people toward a shared goal. In a period with no writing, no formal government, and no currency, that level of cooperation speaks to something profound about the people who built Stonehenge. And here is the layer of this story that researchers find most intriguing. Why Scotland specifically? The blue stones that make up the inner rings of Stonehenge were sourced from the Preseli Hills in southwest Wales. The sarsen uprights came from Marlborough Downs, roughly 25 kilometers north of the site. Both of those choices, while remarkable, represent stones chosen from within a reasonable cultural territory. But the altar stone, the central stone, the stone placed at the very heart of the monument, came from a region with which the people of Wiltshire had no obvious geographic connection. Unless, of course, the connection was intentional. A forthcoming study led by Professor Mike Parker Pearson of University College London, cited in international archaeology publications and reported by CNN, proposes a compelling interpretation. According to Parker Pearson and his colleagues, Stonehenge's construction, specifically the phase around 2620 to 2480 BC, when the monument was significantly rebuilt, may have been a deliberate act of political and cultural unification. This was a period when new people were arriving in Britain from continental Europe, from regions in what is now the Netherlands and Germany. The theory suggests that Stonehenge may have been constructed, or reconstructed, as a monument of convergence, a place that physically incorporated stones from the far corners of Britain as a way of binding its peoples together. If that interpretation holds, then the altar stone at the center was not just an architectural choice, it was a statement. Bringing a stone from the very tip of Scotland, from as far away as you could go and still be in Britain, placed something of Scotland at the heart of England. The monument itself became a map of the island, a physical record of unity built in stone and sweat and extraordinary human effort. Whether you find that idea compelling or not, it raises a question that no amount of mineral fingerprinting can answer on its own. Why did it matter so much? What drove communities to sacrifice years of labor and untold human risk to place particular stones in particular places? That question, of course, remains open. But what science has now given us is a far clearer picture of the scale of ambition involved. We know, with a confidence that simply did not exist a few years ago, that the people who built Stonehenge were operating across the full geographic length of Britain. They were not isolated communities stumbling toward a monument by accident. They were connected, they were organized, and they were capable of moving mountains, sometimes literally. If you find yourself genuinely fascinated by what science is uncovering about the ancient world, and honestly, how could you not be, Hit subscribe so you do not miss what we cover next. And drop a comment below. Do you think Stonehenge was a calendar, a temple, a political statement, or something else entirely? Thousands of people have weighed in on this, and the answers are genuinely interesting. There is still a long list of questions that not even the most advanced geochemical analysis can resolve. We do not know the precise route the altar stone traveled. We do not know whether it was moved by land or sea, or some combination of both. We do not know the name of a single person involved in building Stonehenge. Not the engineer, not the quarryman, not the community leader who decided this stone, from this place, should sit at the heart of the monument. What we do know is that every time a new technique is turned toward this structure, the answer that comes back is the same. The people who built this were more capable, more connected, and more intentional than anyone expected. Stonehenge is, reportedly, still yielding surprises. Researchers are currently preparing to observe a rare lunar standstill, a celestial event that happens only once every 18.6 years, to test theories about whether the monument also served as a lunar observatory. The last opportunity to properly study this was nearly 2 decades ago. The next window opens in 2025. What that observation reveals may add yet another layer to a structure that has been studied for 4 centuries and still has not finished telling its story. The mystery of Stonehenge is not solved. It is deepened. And right now, in laboratories in Australia, Wales, and England, scientists are still looking at stones, weighing them, dating them, tracing the invisible signatures written into their crystals, trying to hear what they have been quietly saying for 5,000 years. If this kind of deep-time archaeology captures your curiosity the way it does mine, you might want to watch what we have coming next, a look at another ancient structure that was only recently discovered to be far older and far more complex than anyone had assumed. One that rewrites the timeline of organized human settlement in a way that makes even Stonehenge look recent. That one is worth watching to the end.